and then they go into the lease payments. Once we get them in there, so the capital outlay is kind of my savings to when we get them, then we purchase them, and then they'll go into leases.
First year, if we have capital outlay, we keep capital outlay. The next year, we get budgeted back to the lease lines.
Does the what? I'm curious. I actually know this, I guess, but does the total bid of the cost go to the capital outlay?
Yes, sir.
No.
It should be 12 months worth. We budget 12 months worth of suspected lease payments plus half the outfitting cost.
So it's a portion of the cost.
So
goes to
that,
capital
what you see
outlay.
reflected there is 12 months worth of a year's worth. Lease payments plus half the cost of upfitting, which half of that would probably run about $16,000 per vehicle. Because we finance half the upfitting, we pay up front on the other half. So it's about $16,000 per unit right now. No, probably more than that. It's 37,000 upfit now. So it's 32. So it's 19,000 per unit we have to pay up front for the equipment that we install on it, and then it's 12 months worth of lease payments. So that's for 8 vehicles. That's what's reflected in capital outlay.
Can I get you to go to the podium and explain that to the public so they understand what you're talking about? Because I know where you're coming from.
Yeah, right.
But they don't.
So what's reflected in capital outlay is 12 months worth of lease payments for 8 vehicles. Also, what's reflected in capital outlay is it costs $37,000 for us to put all the equipment on a vehicle that requires us for the patrol guys to operate. And the way we handle that now is half of that upfitting cost is financed through the lease payment, and then we pay for the other half basically out of pocket.
Yeah.
So that's what you see on those 8. And that capital outlay is for 8 patrol vehicles.
So when the public's looking at this, the cost of the vehicles, we look at the capital outlay, which is Fund 570, and then also after the first year, the first 12 months, we look over at the lease payments, which is
That's our current vehicles we have in the fleet. We're paying leases on every month.
that's the way we do it.
And a lot of times we could have in your savings on capital outlay, because that money just stays there until we actually acquire a vehicle and hits the ground. So even when the vehicle comes in and it goes to the upfitter, we're not paying anything on that vehicle until it actually lands at the sheriff's department. So depending on when the budget cycle that lands, yes, there's 12 months worth of lease payments in there, but if we don't get them 6 months to the year, then there's 6 months of that capital outlay savings that we have because we're not paying lease payments on it.
Okay.
But
The cost of the vehicle is the same.
Cost of the
It's
vehicle.
just how we account for it.
Yes.
And so I'm explaining to the public that we do it two ways. We start with the capital outlay, and then we move it over to lease payments, and that's how we do it.
And there's no doubt, we won't get all 8 vehicles in October.
Right.
We won't. But the way the manufacturing process is and the way the fleet sales land, we could get a call from one of our fleet dealers and have 8 in October, or we may have 3 in October and 4 in the spring. It just depends. So we got to prepare. Unfortunately, we have to prepare depending on how the manufacturing process and the acquisition parts of this is.
And then the way we do call it upfitting, is that right?
Upfitting, that's installing all the equipment.
Right, all the equipment that has to go
Yes.
on the vehicle. Half that is included in capital outlay, and
Yes.
the other half goes.
It's financed through the lease payment.
Good.
And where is the money that we, on the trade-ins, on all the ones that we, reason we went with enterprises, that we trade them in and that reduces our price?
So currently, when we sell vehicles, Enterprise sells those vehicles for us, and how they do that is first they put them on a dealer market network first, trying to get the most money they can get from them. If there's no dealers out there that are willing to purchase our vehicles, then they just go to general auction. Once those are sold, those proceeds, now just a check is issued, and this budget cycle they're being just deposited into the general fund as revenue.
And that's not reflected on what we're looking at.
That's not reflected on what.
That's the source of revenue.
Source of revenue.
And it will remain that no matter how that trade-in goes. If per generally accepted accounting principles, whatever that vehicle is sold, we must show it on the revenue side.
Okay, we're just dealing with expenses right now, we're not dealing with revenues.
Yes.
Okay.
Is it, I'm just thinking what we did last commissioners court. I don't need to get off track here, but the Road and Bridge bought a new piece of equipment and there was a trade-in allowance, and that's the same as that's, so if the vehicles are traded in and we don't get money, then it goes against the lease payments or off the capital outlay, I guess.
It's different because you're talking lease vehicles versus capital items. Everything that Road and Bridge has is a capital item. We have paid 100% for that item. For the vehicles, we're only leasing those. And we do get that money back, but we pay 100% for the vehicle regardless. But it's again, it's accounting rules and we have to follow them.
To make it a little bit more confusing, we say lease payments, but it's not a normal lease, like you would go to a dealership and lease a vehicle and you get so many miles a year to drive, and at the end of that, if we kept these Tahoes for the full amount of what it's leased, basically we'll own the vehicle at the end of that if we decide to keep it. We finance the full amount of the vehicle. Now, we're trying to get rid of those when Enterprise believes it's the best market value.
So the goal is, in my thoughts of everything that I've seen, the goal is not to purchase those vehicles after 4 years. We do not own them. There would still have to be something for them to become Kerr County's name.
So the problem with Enterprise is they're not a dealership. So they can't, even though in order for them to purchase directly from the manufacturer to give us the best rate, they're not a dealership, but that's why we have to finance them as a leasing deal because they can't direct sell a vehicle to us. So kind of a little different.
So in accounting terms, it's called, we are from Enterprise, we have the right to use Enterprise's vehicle. So that's how it's looked at with GASB 87. I don't like GASB 87, just FYI, because it's created a whole lot more work.
Right.
So,
But it is, I think it's, the only reason I'm bringing that up is, aside from being very confusing, we can keep track of it. It's confusing, it's confusing. We gotta follow the rules. But I think that just for the public's perception, and I think the court's perception, it inflates the sheriff's budget a great amount, and it'd be nice if there was a offset. I mean, they get prisoners that were getting a large amount of revenue, $1 million a year, and then we're getting a trade-in allowance on our vehicles. And it's just, I don't know, it doesn't appear real to me, but we have to do it that way.
And as long as y'all understand, I guess now the public understands, you're gonna see substantial increases in that capital outlay and the lease payment line item every year. Because eventually it will reflect an entire fleet on the Enterprise program. But y'all gotta remember, but behind the large number is revenue that comes into the year that kind of helps that it's backing that large increase in the budget. So when y'all look at this, yes, it has gone up, but there is additional revenue backing those increases. Unless we can figure out how to make it reflect on that line item and keep it down, which Tanya says we
Our
cannot.
CPAs will let us do it.
Yeah, but as long as the public knows, there are revenues backing that increase year after year after year.
It looks ugly, doesn't it?
It looks ugly, and it's gonna get a lot uglier, I'm sorry, but it will. But there are vehicle fleet sale revenues that are backing that increase that you see on that line item.
so is there a chance that we could maybe even, instead of financing the upfitting cost, go ahead and 100% pay for the upfitting cost, and then we're minimizing the amount that is coming through as a lease
Yeah,
payment?
so that will drastically increase your capital outlay budget, because then instead of roughly 19,000, we're going to put around 37,000 per vehicle in the capital outlay. We
But
can't do it that way.
But that could be paid for with debt funds instead of with operating funds.
So what you're saying is we could use debt funds to pay up 100% of the upfitting and just lease the actual vehicle amount. So that would show a reflection on the lease payment.
Yeah, and keep in mind, we're selling used vehicles,
Yeah.
so you've got to keep that in mind too. So far this year, it's about 45,000, I think, has came into the general fund. So relatively speaking, it's not gonna fluctuate that much in that expense line.
Jason?
Yes, sir.
Question for you.